Okay, so hello everyone. We are going to continue with the program. I'm Capitalia. It's my pleasure to introduce you Pablo Ruiz Fabo, who is going to talk us about MeThAL towards the macroanalysis of theatre in Alsatian. Pablo, please.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I will be talking about what Alsatian theatre is, basically project goals, how we selected our purpose, and the encoding we're carrying out on it. Then we'll have our sharing the resources and the first results we found. So Alsatian theatre, first of all, what's Alsatian? This refers to Germanic varieties spoken in eastern France, in the Alsace region. So this was the main oral means of communication in the area until the last third of the 20th century, where it lost ground in favor of French usage. And one particularity is that standard orthographies have been proposed for writing Alsatian varieties, but actual practices vary, okay? So, in Alsatian, there's been a regular theatrical production since at least the early 19th century, with a golden age revival of Alsatian theatre around 1900. This was partly for identity reasons, Alsatians who wanted to set themselves a little apart from the rest of the German Empire. But the drama production tradition continues to our days with lots of theatre groups performing. The main genres are popular genres. Comedy is predominant, either refined comedies or more kind of low humor, so to speak. But there are also popular dramas, Volksstücke, and tales, fantastic tales. So, why is it interesting to study the tradition? Well, from the point of view of computational literary studies, this has not been explored before using computational means. And it's also interesting since there are two major traditions surrounding this space, French theatre and German theatre. It's also interesting to be able to draw comparisons. Also, there's quite a volume of public domain material, okay? Printed material besides. From the point of view of NLP, studying Alsatian text poses some challenges because, well, there's not that much electronic text available. Orthography is not standard, and usually there's code switching in the texts mixed with standard German or with French. And finally, well, these varieties, I think it's important to promote their vitality, right? Oral varieties, it does make a change in terms of language preservation to promote this type of material. So, what are we trying to do in the project? Well, we're creating the first large, publicly available corpus of Alsatian theatre encoded in TI, and the period covered is mainly from 1870 to 1940. So we are aiming, we've got 50 plays encoded in TI, it's about 500,000 tokens, but there was no previous electronic text for this at all. Okay, so this is from zero, if you wish. And we were also starting to develop the first linguistic resources to analyze this material, and we're promoting the online presence of this type of drama. So another way to look at these goals, well, we're trying to do quantitative drama analysis. There are many projects going on. I mentioned here some projects for German, like for drama Q-Track, emotions in drama. For French, like Drama Code or Théâtre Classique, and then Draper, which is like a hub for TI versions of plays in many languages. But here, the difference is we're focusing on a minor tradition that, as said, has not been explored so far with the quantitative or computational means. And the goal is to complement what is known about this tradition. There's been several works studying this based on smaller samples. So now we want to give it the larger sample, more macro type of approach to complement available knowledge. This is also increasing the digital resources available for Alsatian. There's been major projects. The coordinated by my colleagues in Strasbourg in partnership with other French universities for the regional languages of France, like those two there, Restore and MeThAL. Yeah. So it's also with this spirit, bearing this idea in mind, of contributing to the preservation of these language varieties. And finally, studying this material might be helpful for social linguistics, insofar as speech as represented in the place is actually representative of whatever way people spoke in the place period. So, how are we selecting the corpus and what are we doing with it? Yeah. Okay, so we're trying to use already digital sources. There's a platform at the Strasbourg National Library. There's about 250 Alsatian plays that have already been digitized. But these are images, okay? This is no text, you cannot search in it, it's just image. So we're doing the OCR, among other things. Google Books was also mentioned this morning by Lara and Niels. So some plays are in Google Books and not at our national library. Or archive.org, also an interesting resource. Okay, so all that, there's no electronic text, it's images, it's scans. Wikisource, however, there's the complete works by one single author called August Lustig. So this is already electronic text, although there's no TI encoding, but we've already encoded that. That was pretty quick, right? I mean, the text was already there, they're using wiki markup. So that's automata, some regular expressions, basically, to convert it to TI. In this case, in the case of Wikisource text, okay? Yeah, and that's where we find, by the way, these tunes also, it's also with the songs, the Wikisource material. Okay, so we have this, we try to work with digitized materials, but if we look at specialized literature and some major plays in the tradition are missing among those digital sources, we have created our own digitizations. And then we do the OCR. Okay? Just to make sure that we don't miss the main works that have never been digitized before. So, how are we selecting the plays? Well, as you can see, this is like a first exploratory effort to get more electronic material for this tradition. So we're striving for variety, rather than focusing on the most canonical, well, to the extent you can speak of a canon in this type of context. But instead of focusing on the most major authors, we're striving for variety. And we're also representing lesser known authors. Geographic variety is important, right? Because this is a dialect continuum, so representing the different geographical varieties is also important. Also the periods, the different decades in our corpus period. Female authors, also interesting. Some of them only have female characters, for example, so that's a particularity as well. We're focusing on comedy because that's the main part of the tradition, but we are also including major dramas. There were some interesting attempts at writing very serious theater in Alsatian, like naturalistic theater, for example, some attempts. Yeah, and as I was saying, we do obtain digitizations for major works if none exist. Okay? Okay, so we want to be able to have this in TI for many reasons. So how are we going about this? Well, TI, yeah. As has been mentioned this morning, the purpose of the comic verse projects is also encoded in TI. It has several advantages, right? The structural divisions of a play are encoded. It's easy to add metadata. So, but the thing is, it takes time to get stuff in TI. So how are we doing it? This is a diagram of our encoding workflow. I'll go over it quickly. Okay, so there are two, if you wish, there are two main tracks here in the workflow. The first track here is for the main body of the plays, okay? After the character list to the curtain, okay? To the final curtain. This is very regular actually for theater. So this lends itself easily to automation, well, easily. It does lend itself reliably to automation. So we've carried out OCR on this material using Tesseract. It's one of the available tools. The thing is, we use both French and German models for Alsatian, and also script models. Script in the sense of Antiqua, Latin characters, Roman characters, or Fraktua, Gothic script. Okay? So yeah, so both languages German and French, and both scripts, Factua and Antipa. So we mix that and we get pretty good results. Then this gets corrected manually, of course. Otherwise, there's always a small percentage of error. So this gets corrected manually. And on the basis of the manually corrected OCR outputs, well, we carry out the automatic TI encoding using both symbolic means and machine learning. Okay? Precisely, because with the first corrections, once we have the first corrected place in TI, then you can create a sequence labeling models to automatically predict the tags. Okay? Yeah. So after the first 10 tries, I think we started machine learning. But the rules work pretty well too, you know. As said, this is for the main body of the place. What happens, however, front matter? That is the cover page, the character list. That's way too irregular, at least with our knowledge, to do machine learning on this or even rules to automatically tag this. And even for the OCR, there's too much variability. Proper nouns are too difficult for OCR to do this. So that we've transcribed manually. Okay, so we have this database with about 2,300 character names with their role in the play. Yeah, and some metadata that we've added that I'm going to talk about after. Okay. Yeah, so here you have the both pieces of the workflow. So the other advantage of doing this manual transcription of the bibliographical metadata and the character information is that with that, well, I'm going to skip that because this is what I said verbally right now. Okay, yeah. So since we have this database of character information, this already gives us a first overview of the corpus without looking at the place text. See, it takes a while to get the entire corpus in TI, but we want an overview even before the entire text is included. So the character metadata are an interesting way to go about it. And it has been pointed out in the literature, right, how, for example, the paper by Wittmann and collaborators, they were discussing how the dramatis personae is an indication of social groups in a play. And well, in classical works that you have there, Twista's manual on theater analysis and others, they do talk how the characters do determine the possible plots and the possible conflicts. Okay. Yeah. So let me show you quickly what we did. We annotated characters' profession, their age and gender, social class, and also we created a taxonomy of social professional groups. Okay. So with that, it looks a little bit like this. Well, you know, this is a delimited format, so this gives you. These are all the annotations I spoke about, other than the professional groups. The professional groups are there, inspired by classical work on historical professional activities. There are not just the job titles here, there's also social groups like people who work for an association, like do volunteer work, you know, associative work. And the rentiers, is that a profession? I don't know. Basically, they cash money in, I don't know. Yeah. So with this, we had some results about the evolution of these groups in the corpus period. One of the results is here in characters. There's a decline in characters related to the world of agriculture and a rise of characters belonging to, well, bourgeoisie in the sense of artisans, the crafts. Okay. Yeah, artisans in city or small town settings even. Okay. So this may be related to the exact period to which the corpus belongs. It's a period of a rural decline, right, an exodus to the cities. Might be related to that. Some other generalizations. I named this discontinuous groups, in the sense that some of the groups, like the clergy, military, and well, what we term the associated world. So in some decades, for example, see the decade of the First World War, the military is not present at all in the place. These plays are not political plays. It's a different type of entertainment. So it makes sense that they are careful with religion, clergy, and the military as well. We also annotated the female characters separately. Problem is that there are many less female characters than male characters. So it's difficult to draw generalizations because of the small sample size. But, well, the point is having these annotations allows us to try to look at this in a more quantitative manner. Okay, so, well, actually, some of the nice findings that we've got here, in some cases, they do complement what was known about this tradition. Okay? These more quantitative generalizations, in some cases, they do challenge what was known about social groups represented in the play. Okay. So, well, the point of doing this work is also being able to share it with the community and getting this tradition to be better known and putting it in a better position for it to be studied. So, besides the project side, we are sharing the material on a Git repository and also on one of the open repositories at the French Infrastructure for Digital Humanities. It's called MeThAL. It's open data repositories. Like there's many others. We've also shared for now 25 plays on Dracor, on the Dracor platform. This is also pretty decent. Yeah. And well, but precisely, we didn't only want to produce data, we also wanted to produce means for people to interact with this material. So we have a purpose exploration interface, yeah, that you can use without programming knowledge. If you have TEI, well, at least you have to know how to parse it or how to analyze it in some way. But with an interface like this, you can access the material, any type of person. Right? So there's the typical navigation functions and filtering functions you would find in many other projects. In some cases, we have synopsis for the plays. But we have, well, of course, the TEI encoded text can be read on the interface. But we also have some navigation functions that are a bit more original. Here what we have is navigating the corpus and based on character concurrences in the character list. So, okay, for example, these are all the plays written by female authors. What you have there are the professional groups that interact with, that are co-present with each other in the character list. That's what you have there. So, for example, one thing you can see already is in this subcorpus here by the female authors. What we get is that about 45% of female characters are described with a profession, and 54% of male characters. If we looked at male authors, the figures, the numbers would be very different. There would be maybe 12% of female characters with a profession and 80% of male characters described with a profession. So depending on who's writing, characterization is different. And this type of finding you would not have in the traditional literature, which does not use this kind of more macroanalytical, if you want to call it that way, approach. Okay. Also, this is interactive, this table, so if you want to zero in on the place where the character list mentions both artisans and elementary professions, in this case usually the domestic workers who work for the artisan. So you can click there and you will get there are two places which document that co-presence. Okay. So we thought this was a neat way for the general public to interact with the material in ways that maybe they haven't thought of, or that wouldn't be possible unless you create the interface that supports this navigation paradigm. If you want to call it paradigm. Navigation functions. Yeah. Okay, so to conclude, our learning is that, it's viable to encode TEI with symbolic means or even with machine learning based on the OCR outputs. And then, I think our results show that these character metadata, these character annotations can be useful to gain an interesting overview of the collection that in some cases complements what was known, based on smaller sample analysis. Okay. Yeah, okay, so what happens with the text? If you want to carry out analysis based on the text, most of them will require automatically detecting orthographic variants, and that's hard. It was mentioned at Tony Bernard from ULA talk, no, and the non-standard orthography was also mentioned, so here too, yeah. We have started a little bit on that. We recently had a paper, my colleague created a lexicon for sentiment analysis that takes into account orthographic variation, so that was pretty neat. So we want to continue along those ways. And we're also doing descriptive work on variation pattern extraction, yeah, using the variant elements right now. So, who's doing this? Well, at Strasbourg, these are my colleagues. It's just a way to find them. Yeah, some of them are specialized in sociolinguistics, so Alsatian sociolinguistics, and some are specialized in language resource development for low resource scenarios. And then, well, all the interns that I want to thank for all their work. Yeah, so I would be interested in hearing your input about this. If you know cases similar to this in other traditions, see anything that theater I'm interested in. Yeah, if you have similar experiences or similar material, and we'll talk about those songs. We'll share songs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is really a great project, and I think it's very important to kind of share experiences of working with these small, non-standard languages. Do we have questions or comments? Please.
Thank you for your presentation, Pablo. It was really, really interesting, and there is a lot of echo in my own project, sure. So my first question is, was it easy to know the name of the authors? Because I know for vaudeville, for theatre in general, people are using a lot of pseudonym, and sometimes it's not easy at all to know who is writing this play. And in my case, I don't know for your corpus, but vaudeville is written by several authors, not just one. So that's also a problem. And I was also wondering, because I take a look at the name of the characters, and there is some really French names and sometimes some really German names, and I can imagine that this kind of theater is between two theater traditions, and we are speaking in French about emploi, for which kind of characters is playing in a theater play, and I can imagine that it's between the emploi, the German emploi, and the French emperor. So how do you manage it? So these two traditions, these two theatrical and comedy, yeah. So.
Okay, so about the names of the authors, they're generally well known enough. I mean, these are printed sources, most of them. Some of them are manuscript, but it's a minority. So they're printed by standard publishing houses. So the authors are generally known. Some of them are written by a group of people. Yeah. So they are anonymous if you wish. Yeah. But they are exceptions. They are exceptions. Yeah. And I think you realize we're talking about like 100 years later than your project corpus. So maybe, yeah, it's less problematic. Yeah. So I would say in exceptional cases, it's difficult to know who the author was. At least in terms of a name. Finding information online about those authors, that's a bit harder. You would need to dig in archives maybe for some of them, but some are well known, in some cases Wikipedia entry. We are adding into Wikidata too. Anything from the project we add to Wikidata, the author names and place as well. About the emploi, so emploi, this is a bit like how you classify, how you describe different character roles. Like, the lover or the antagonist, and a bit more details on that, no? Yeah. Okay, so the thing is that the annotations we've been carrying out so far, they're a bit more related to kind of the way the social world is represented, not so much the dramatic technique, but that would be extremely interesting, yeah. See, that would be potentially a question of literary interest related to literary theory and literary history that might be addressable by these character annotations. And one thing with character annotations is, I think they're quite manageable to carry out. Of course, there's always difficulties with anything that is a manual annotation and annotation schema, and agreeing how to create it and making sure that it's consistently applied by the annotators. But see, it's one page of the play that we need to annotate, as opposed to the 100 pages for the entire play. Yeah. So that's why working with character metadata may be interesting. To know the amplitude, you might need knowledge of the play, though, as opposed to what I showed today with the professional group, which is much more superficial, right? But yeah, but that would be, I think that would be a very interesting question, also with relevance for literary history and theory, since I think in German it's Rollenfach, no? Is it related to Rollenfach, this idea of, yeah, it's similar, no? Yeah, so see, that would be comparing, like, this idea of Rollenfach and this amplitude, if we apply it to the Alsatian corpus, can we establish parallels to one of both traditions, or both, or how? To what extent is it similar to one or the other, or not? Maybe it's different. See, precisely, yeah. Maybe there are specificities to the Alsatian.
If I may, just a last question. Those plays, it was actually played in theater or just printed?
Yeah, it was a business. It was kind of like a business of the things. Yeah.
No, but sometimes I know that for vaudeville, I've got some vaudeville in Occitan, for example, and it was not really played, but just printed. So it could happen also.
Yeah, in most cases they were played. I know some cases these naturalistic plays, for example, that was not very successful to begin with. So it's very interesting because see, you have people doing like like very socially engaged writing in Alsatian, but then the audience did not perceive it correctly, so it was less representative. They tried, but it was not successful. Yeah. So yeah, that would be one piece that was not representative.
I think we still have time for two quite short questions, please.
Thank you for your inspiring talk. I've got a question about the situation of sources. You deal with printed texts, right?
Most.
And first you mentioned briefly the existence of manuscripts. So I don't know the Alsatian tradition. I know quite well the Austrian situation. I would say 80 or 90% of all plays performed of the 19th century from a dialectal folkloristic tradition never has been printed. So is there a quantity in your corpus? Well, yes, it's a completely different situation. If you would like to extract manuscripts, then it's a huge project only to mine the texts. But is there an amount of pieces that exists only in the form of manuscripts?
Okay, so what I can say, in the digitized material that we know, in the scans that we know of, it's a minority. However, in reality, if we go to archives, I do not know what the percentage is, but it would be very interesting to know, yes. I know one major author who also had printed plays later, called Ketna. So Ketna, we have some manuscripts, and we would need to do like automatic handwriting recognition, so it's kind of hard, and you need someone who can read I think it's called Courant, the script? Courant, yeah, so Courant, it's hard, I cannot read Courant properly. One of my colleagues there, several of my colleagues that I mentioned they have the skills. Yeah, so yeah, that would be an interesting project, but as I said, it requires going to archives and yeah.
And then one more short one, please.
I will super short, two super short questions. First, did you use any taxonomy for social classification? And second, do you plan to publish it on Dracor, the corpus?
I I'm sorry, I think with the loudspeakers, I can't hear very well. You said that we use the taxonomy for the social...
For the notation of the characters.
But our annotations were about the social professional groups, and then, yeah, for that, we created our own taxonomy. It's inspired by HISCO. It's the historical profession taxonomy created in the Netherlands. But we adapted it a little bit to the Alsatian situation, to the types of characters we were finding in the corpus. What was your second question about?
Second, publishing plans for publish the corpus on Dracor.
Oh yeah, actually, okay, so on Dracor, what we have is 25 plays. The personography, including the taxonomy, this is all encoded in TI using the feature structures from Alsatian, which is very flexible, you know. Yeah. So that's published for now on Nakala, it's the French open data repository for the humanities, and also on our Git. So that's already published.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you, this is great. I'm afraid you need to discuss with all the others who want to ask you things, and I also would like to ask you things, but we shall do that later. Let's give thanks